Alright, gather round folks, because Uncle 3 is back with another spine-tingling tale from James's story. You remember the Qing Dynasty braid from last night? Well, tonight we're diving into something even more ancient and sinister, a demon Fang, also from the Qing Dynasty. This all goes back to that massive migration of Chinese folks long ago. Some were fed up with the regime, others were being hunted by the Qing Dynasty, and so they spread out across Southeast Asia, heading to places like Thailand, Malaysia, and our own Singapore. And wouldn't you know it, during that great exodus, they left behind a trail of artifacts and places brimming with spirits, even demons, dragged right over from China. This particular spooky story unfurls right in the heart of Singapore, playing out before the 1970s. Back then, Singapore wasn't all gleaming malls and organized food courts. James actually heard this chilling account from his own father, Kai, who was just a greenhorn kid of 17 at the time. A real hothead too. The story takes us to the most Chinese-populated part of Singapore, to a house that Kai described as strikingly beautiful, with a unique blend of French and local architecture, standing out even amidst the traditional Chinese buildings. Now, young Kai had a favorite haunt, a famous chendol stand, a popular Singaporean dessert joint back in the 70s. This place was always bustling, but it was tiny. So, the savvy owner did what any good business person would do. He leased the house next door. This second house was primarily for parking, but if the shop got too packed, they'd even set up tables there for folks to enjoy their chendol. That house next to the chendol shop, that's where our tale truly begins. It was an earthy yellow, built in a distinctly European style, a two-story affair with a ground floor and an upper level. The ground floor, as I said, was exclusively for parking. Kai used to tell James how peculiar and gloomy that house felt. He specifically remembered walking in and seeing these thick roots on the left side, burrowing deep into the wall and snaking up like a banyan tree, making you think there must be some giant tree on the roof. The house just had this weird, oppressive vibe to it. And there was this Taiwanese uncle, the parking attendant, who worked there, though Kai wasn't sure if he was part of the Chendol family or just an employee. Kai, being the curious sort, found himself parking there a lot. He became utterly fascinated by the place. His curiosity just grew and grew until he just had to ask the Taiwanese uncle if he could look around upstairs. He begged the guy, offered him cigarettes, even slipped him cash, but the uncle always flat out refused to let him go up. Now, Kai was young and stubborn. You tell a kid no, and they just get more determined, right? Every time he went for chendol, he'd pester that uncle, begging to be allowed upstairs. Eventually, the uncle got visibly annoyed and just blurted out that he didn't like people going to the upper floor of that house. Looking back, Kai admitted he might have been a bit pushy, but at the time, he was fuming. Why was parking on the ground floor okay, but the upstairs was off limits, and the uncle was just an employee? Why was he so strict? So Kai finally laid it bare to the Taiwanese uncle. Look, why can't I go upstairs? I'm paying my way. If you're worried I'll mess something up, you can come with me. I just want to admire the architecture. It's so beautiful and strange. And that's when the Taiwanese uncle leaned in and said, "Oh my, listen to me. Everyone in the Chinese community around here knows this house has a ghost on the upper floor. The moment those words left his mouth, Kai's skin prickled with goosebumps, and his curiosity spiked even more. Without Kai even needing to ask, the Taiwanese uncle launched into a story so impressive that Kai would later recount it to James. The uncle warned Kai about the danger of going up there. He explained that the house used to belong to a family of traditional Chinese medicine practitioners, a family that had lived and thrived there for generations. Then, one day, a descendant from China came to stay for a while. When it was time for this relative to leave, they gave the owner a gift, a fang. The descendant claimed it wasn't some ordinary animal tooth, no tiger or wild boar fang, but a human fang, specifically the fang of an ancestral Qing Dynasty Jiangshi, a sort of zombie or vampire. And this fang, they said, had the power to suppress demons. The owner, naturally, was baffled. A demon fang that suppresses demons? And how could he be sure it was even a demon's fang? He accepted the gift politely, but the moment his relative was out of sight, he put it up for sale like any other antique. He advertised it as a Qing Dynasty ancestral Jiangshi fang, emphasizing it wasn't from a common animal, and even had it encased in gold to make it look more legitimate. He also spread rumors that if you wore it or kept it in your house, it would ward off evil spirits. His sole intention was to turn a profit. He didn't actually believe the fang was demonic, but after a month, with no buyers, he just kept it in the house. Usually, nothing happened when it was tucked away in a cabinet. But then, one day, he placed it on his family altar and got an idea. He thought, if this is really a demon fang, I need to test it to convince people to buy it. No one's going to pay good money just for a tooth. So, in a very foolish act, he cut his own finger and let a drop of blood fall onto the fang to see what would happen. Nothing. Absolutely nothing out of the ordinary. The blood just soaked right into the fang. But this was only the beginning of the real tragedy. 3 days later, his beloved daughter, the light of his life, died suddenly in her sleep. On her neck, there was a faint swirling mark. When the police investigated, they determined the cause of death was cadaveric toxic bacteria, a kind of poison that only shows up if you've had extensive, unprotected contact with a corpse. Heartbroken and devastated by his daughter's death, the owner began to suspect the fang. In the days that followed, he tried everything to escape the house, terrified. He wanted to sell it immediately and move away with his remaining child and his wife. Before he sold it, he carefully hid the fang upstairs in a box. He sold the house and swore he would never ever set foot there again. And who bought the house? None other than the chendol shop owner himself. They hired the very same Taiwanese uncle to manage the parking for a monthly wage. On his very first night there, the Taiwanese uncle clearly saw it, a figure in Qing Dynasty official robes standing at the upstairs window, staring down at him. The figure didn't do anything. He just stood there watching, but that was enough to scare him senseless. He immediately called the chendol shop owner and told him to get a sorcerer. When the sorcerer arrived and went upstairs to perform his rituals, he came back down and said simply, "This house can't be sold now. The ghost is on the first floor, and I can see it hiding right there." He explained that the ghost wasn't malicious. It wouldn't harm anyone, but no one should ever go near or stay on the first floor. To this day, that ghost still lingers. The Taiwanese uncle told Kai that a few years later, the chendol owner brought in a Tibetan monk to chant scriptures and try to suppress the terrifying spirit. The monk went straight up to the first floor, stayed a long time, and then came back down, shaking his head. He declared, "This ghost has grown roots right there. It's stuck. It can't leave. This house has two options. Either sell it as is, or leave the first floor completely untouched and only use the ground floor. I myself don't have enough spiritual power to capture it. We'll have to wait for someone with the right destiny and enough power to deal with this ghost." And so, to this very day, that house remains abandoned, unrepaired, unrenovated. People use the ground floor for parking, but not a soul dares to step onto that first floor. And that, my friends, concludes James's two stories about those haunted Chinese artifacts from centuries ago, from the Qing Dynasty. Tune in next time for Night 29, right here on Uncle Three's Ghost Stories channel.